going on down there?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to WTF at TFW's WTF at TCG. The syllables never stop, and neither does my enjoyment in saying them. Hi, Aaron is joining me, and that's him over there. Hello, Aaron.
Hi. How you doing?
Pretty good. And we're joined once again by our permanent rotating chair that always has one person sitting in it, Drew Nolosco from Wizards of the Coast. Hello, Drew.
Hey, everybody. Hello. It's good to be back on the show. Hello, all listeners.
Yes. For those of you who might be tuning in for the first time, because I realize that tends to happen sometimes, Drew is the brand manager for Transformers TCG. So that is correct. That is the perspective he is operating from.
And although I work with the acronym TCG regularly, I almost attempted to do the full intro names for your show that you just did before and realized that it was probably a critical error.
It's a skill I picked up in the last decade or so. I don't even have to think about the letters anymore. They just start rolling out, which is real fun when I see other people try to say the show name, because if you're new to it, it takes a good 5 or 6 years to just start saying WTF and TFW.
So let's set a marker 5 years from now. Let's see if I figured it out.
Yeah, 2024.
All right.
That's going to be our big reveal at Gen Con is the pronunciation of this podcast name. But before 2024, in fact, before 2020, Transformers TCG got its organized play, which is the bedrock of why this recording is happening, and as was explained to me by one of our biggest local tournament organizers who has been behind this game since before it came out in Canada, that is the quickest Wizards Hasbro has ever gotten organized play set up for one of their games, is what he told me.
Well, we have some experience now.
Yeah.
And the fact that we had done Kaijudo relatively recently and their organized play really helped cut through a lot of the difficult work in setting up an organized play program. So that was recent in the company's memory. And so we were able to build on a lot of those processes. It has been in the works for some time. Yeah. And you'll note that there's one thing that I think really indicates, if you look at it, the fact that this was in the works for some time and it was planned to time with Siege 1 is the fact that we introduced sideboarding with organized play, and you'll notice that there are a lot of interesting cards in Siege 1 that might work well in a sideboard.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think there were even quite a notable number of them in Wave 2, for me at least, where I felt like if there's no sideboarding, then there is definitely the idea that you are building for your local meta with, or at least taking some calculated risks with stuff like enemy combat analysis. Sort of like that was a card you could run with the assumption if you knew folks in your area were excited about combiners, you could run it with combiners because you'd surely run into some other 5-stars. But now it's a real solid sideboard piece for one of the decks I tried putting together. As someone who's not all that great at sideboarding yet, I found with that card, you want to look at your star count spread, and if you've got 3 very different numbers, that's suddenly an enticing card to throw in.
Right, and even from the characters, there were a bunch of characters in Wave 2 that are difficult to consider including just going into a random meta, but if you know that you get the sideboard, you can put them there like Acid Storm and Motormaster and Torox.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's quite exciting for a lot of the player base here. I should say, over here in Toronto, which is located in Canada, we had a very exciting last week or so with this game. It was notable, a bunch of us were talking about it, it was notable how much more excited every individual player was. More of us were showing up because all of our stuff, our catch-up wave, dropped on May 31st. And we were having a lot of gaming happen. It was real fun. We tried out a whole lot of weird decks and stuff that we just had been kind of, in some cases, some of us had been waiting to try out, with a little bit less of an albatross around our neck for importing stuff. And it's been real fun, and we're all starting to just realize that we're in the unique position. We have all this for a month, and then we get another new thing at the end of at the end of June. So
yes, and Wave 3 will be releasing in Canada at the same time as the rest of the English speaking world. So we're caught up.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you again for getting all that. I'm sure part of that was things like organized play in the Energon Open. It would have been problematic to have this territory lagged behind in such a way.
Yes, it absolutely would have, but we also was the right thing to do just because, and we'd been working for this. If we could have gotten this done earlier, we would have.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun looking over the Canadian Wave 2 booster pack specifically, because I was pointing out to everyone, I was like, look at how packed the bilingual text is on these things. I was the only person in the room who was actually that excited about it, but that's just because I'm weird about that.
It's actually a real challenge to fit all that text on there.
It looked like it was. There is a lot of stuff in there, and I actually, this is the thing I can't remember. Is it entirely on the Canadian packaging where it says English only, or is that on all the international packaging?
No, it's on the Canadian packaging.
Yeah, so they had to also, or you guys had to also fit in English only and in 2 languages.
Yes.
So yeah, I was pointing out to everyone. I was like, look at all the hard work. So someone working in graphics had to do a lot of work on this, and for at least 2 minutes, I want to recognize that.
Yes. And that hard work also was done for Wave 3, and we're hard at work on the Wave 4 Canadian packaging.
Phew.
I just approved an interesting product that's not yet announced. That's going to come between Wave 3 and Wave 4.
Very cool.
The Canadian packaging for that product. So yes.
Excellent.
We've got this into the queue. We're in our groove, man.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, we're having a good time with it. Also, quickly, I picked up and busted open the new starter with Windblade and Bumblebee, and ran a friend of mine through a demo game of that. And I even ran it, even though it's not in the little rulebook anymore. Because I shuffled the deck and then I didn't have time to split it up. We ran it both drawing from the same deck, and that starter deck, at least the demo I tried out, ran so smoothly, and specifically, I didn't have to talk as much because things were just coming up as we went along. And there's maybe at the end, if we have time, I'll share specifically something in there that really worked for me. But having demoed it once, at least, like, that new starter deck felt leagues better than the original from last year.
Thanks. And that's why that starter deck, I mean, I know it was different for our Canadian friends, but in the other parts of the English-speaking world, that's why that starter deck did not come out with Rise of the Combiners, is we delayed it specifically to make a bunch of improvements that we had learned from the first starter.
Yeah, I would recommend, just if anyone is trying to demo that starter, whoever is playing Decepticons, make sure they go first and then explain why you may or may not want to flip Megatron or Starscream as your first attacker. Like, at least 3 rules present themselves over the course of that, and I really loved it. But
thanks. I really appreciate your note there.
Yeah, no worries. That brings us to sideboarding, which I kind of wanted to open up with. And I had a real specific question for you. This is kind of getting into design side right away, because obviously, if you want to know, like, specifically what sideboarding is, the info's out there. It is 10 battle cards. It is 1 character who is 20 stars or under, which means you can't sideboard Metroplex, which is a pretty nice catch to have right there at the very beginning. You can sideboard Omega Supreme, though.
You sure can.
And I guess my main question is, how did you guys arrive at 10 battle cards? Because ratio-wise, it caught my eye, as with Magic, your sideboard is 15 out of 60. With this one, it is 10 out of 40. So is the 1/4 ratio kind of like just a good rule of thumb for that system?
So we think it is, and we had tested different ratios, but 1/4 seems to work, and for a couple of reasons. First, we want there to be enough flexibility in what you can sideboard, so that if you're going for a strategy where you're looking for a toolkit style sideboard, where you're looking for, okay, here are the 3 or 4 things that I might have to deal with, and I'm looking for sideboard cards to react to those 3 or 4 things, you could put multiple options. We don't want the sideboard to be so narrow that you have to effectively hedge on only trying to react to one strategy or possibly 2. And also, we didn't want it so big that you had answers to every possible thing. Right? There needs to be some legit thought. The sideboard can't just be all the answers stuffed in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly, we want the sideboard to be about 1/4 of a deck is enough to feel like if you're going for a transformational sideboard strategy, where your deck does one thing in its main configuration, and then you sideboard in a different character and all 15 cards. And your deck feels like it does a different thing, like it has a different way to approach winning, that was also a viable tactic, and 15 is about right.
Well,
Too many cards, and like you can just literally switch it out into a different deck, and that violates the kind of spirit of deck building.
yeah, or you mean 10 is about right?
Sorry, 10 is about right.
Yeah,
15's about right at Magic. 10's about right in 40 card deck land.
Yeah, and the one character that was another thing where I assume it was tried out to say a star value in the sideboard instead of a character count, and I'm guessing that might have been, again, like you said, too much of an ability to just run two decks basically.
It is, and one of the really interesting things about War for Cybertron Siege 1 and continued in 2, as you might guess, is that there's a lot of choice in characters that are 6 and fewer stars. A lot of choice. And when we just did a star count, you could put in a whole bunch of characters in your sideboard, like a lot of characters. And we need sideboarding to feel like an informed decision that you make that requires some amount of skill and some amount of forethought, and isn't just, let's throw as many possible answers as I can into the sideboard. Like you still can do that, right? Like you're just limited.
Right.
Your deck needs to have purpose, and your sideboard needs to have purpose. Yeah,
and it's just touching on that whole deck transformation thing, which I think is actually even more relevant to Transformers than it might be for Magic. I think I was already thinking about how I've built a draw engine for Sunstorm once. I sat there thinking about whether or not to just run Sunstorm and Bombshell. They would sort of interfere with each other to a certain degree. And immediately I thought, clearly the way that sideboarding works in this game is you can build a shell of about 35 cards that does something, and then run a main team, but you can have an alternate who would benefit from the same overall effect. Like with card draw, you could run a Sunstorm deck, but hey, maybe you're in a situation where you want to side out Sunstorm for Bombshell. I feel like there's I mean, I don't know Magic super well, but I feel like there's a lot more full-on reconfiguration going on with Transformers due to the nature of the characters, where in Magic it often seems to be more about attuning to an opposing archetype, like a bit more of a reactive change.
In general, that's true. Although I used to, when I was playing Magic more competitively, I was very fond of playing an aggro control deck that would sideboard into a full control deck and sideboard in, say, a whole bunch of counter spells.
Oh man,
okay.
And then sideboard out some creatures, so to go into a much more control strategy. And that, I think that's possible in Transformers. Not that specific thing, because there's not counter spells, as an example.
Yeah.
But I think that people will discover some interesting ways to transform, some of them using the shell system that you're talking about, or building a skeleton that then slots in a different WinCon character. Well, I think all of these things they add a lot of richness that wasn't present when you had to build a deck that had to take on all comers without any way to modify itself.
Yeah. Well, and in Wave 2, when you guys added in cards like Vaporize or Sparring Gear, where it was sort of, in a sense, here is a one of the Wave 1 cards, but with a different pip color and a different name. The sideboarding system also lets me start thinking about the idea of running a deck that is, say, oriented towards a certain color balance, and then with those alternate pip versions of cards, change the color balance of the deck. Switch from, say, an evenly handed deck to a more orange or blue deck. That kind of stuff with this game is making my brain fire a whole lot.
Yep, and I think there's one really interesting pip color possibility that's Siege introduces, which is siding into more black pips.
Yeah, definitely.
And just radically increasing your Pierce value against a deck that's turtling.
Yeah, the whole sideboarding system. I'm hoping that I can convince some more of the local folks to give it a shot in casual, because it's partly I noticed there's a lot of folks who are kind of holding off and thinking I'll wait till I have to before I really start digging into this, but for myself, when I'm not very good at something in a tabletop game, in this last year, I've learned that just doing it more makes me more comfortable. So I'm trying to convince a few more of the Toronto folks, who may not need the convincing, to play 2 out of 3 and let's actually try sideboarding as a practice.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun.
Aaron, I wanted to bop over to you for a second. Have you got any thoughts on sideboarding that might have been crossing your head? I don't know how much you've gotten to play since the rules came out for it.
I haven't gotten to play any. I've sat there and thought seriously about the deck that I am taking to Origins and what I might do with that, with now sideboarding being a thing. And it's definitely going to add layers of like, okay, there's a couple things I have in the deck that are just like, this is kind of broad problem solving. And so I don't know if maybe it'll be take out the so-so answers to everything and put in direct answer for what I think the meta might be, and then the direct answer for what I might come up against, and leave some of the like middling things out. Mm-hmm. But that's all. Again, it's been forever since I've really played with anything that was more than just kitchen table, be it Magic or this. So
now you got to run your kitchen table best 2 out of 3 with sideboards. Just hardcore up that kitchen table.
No, be brutal.
And even though sideboards are a thing, it's still important for everyone to internalize that game 1 is still really important. That unsideboarded game matters a lot.
Right.
And even though the loser of game 1 gets a little bit of advantage in the way they sideboard, because they get to see the winner's character configuration first.
Mm-hmm.
That the person who won game 1 is still at an advantage going into winning a match.
Yeah. If you go in, I've seen this in discussion with modern Magic, I think, where there are some decks that are able to take the risk of basically giving away the first game because that will give them the data to make a much more impenetrable deck going in. But in Transformers, with the nature of this game and also being younger, I think that you don't want to really build like a generic test the waters deck unless you got a super good plan. Although I'm curious, like as we go into the convention season with all these tourneys, the data from these tournaments seems exponentially more interesting to me now, as it's going to start informing like what kind of worked and didn't in sideboarding. And there's a little actually something I wanted to bounce off here that was somewhat related. The first thing I looked for when you guys put up the full documentation for this whole scenario was wishboarding, because we do have cards that pull in stuff from out of the game, and I recently learned that in Magic that stuff has to come off your sideboard when you're in sanctioned competition. So with Transformers it does not, and I was wondering if that is like in general if the current competitive play rules are sort of keeping things a little bit more on the less harsh level, and then like building up from there as case scenarios happen, or was there a particular reason to avoid the wishboard setup with this game?
Yeah, there was. So wishboarding is I think wishes are a little, so just for everybody, wishes are cards that can go fetch a specific card that didn't start in the game. So I think that wishboarding is a little bit on the low power end in Transformers compared to Magic, primarily because Magic allowed you to recurse and keep playing the wishes over and over again a lot easier than Transformers does.
Yeah.
And it's been a long time since I wished in Magic, but and it also, you're basically pre-sideboarding, right? Like with the wishes, it's like, oh, I can go get my sideboard card. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Transformers, wishes will let you do. We wanted it to retain that awesomeness and coolness, because we don't think it's super destabilizing to be able to go wish for whatever you want. Just as a note to everybody who was wondering, at the end of any game where you've gotten cards from outside the game via a wish style card, they don't stay in your deck for the next game. They have to go back to where they came from. And where they came from has to be in your possession at the beginning of the game. So you can't go stand up and yell, hey, really, really need an EMP wave. Who's got an EMP wave? And then, have someone toss you one. You have to have it with you.
Well, kind of just trailing from that, a scenario that was presented to me that did give me a pause for thought was the idea that, especially when you're at a tournament, for instance, like you're transporting a lot of your stuff around, Do you think there would ever be a venue for, and this seems like a weird thing to say, but like a venue for wish board registration of some kind? Only because of the idea that, say, someone has everything in one box, if it gets really mixed up with their sideboard, be it by accident or otherwise, I've known people who try to carry as little as possible when they go to tournaments. Yep. And it seems like it might be risky business, only because I feel like this is also just a year one thing, really. But it seems like it might be an avenue of abuse, or at least an avenue of, doing more judge calls than you might otherwise.
So right now, we think that the slow play guidelines in the DCI that are standard through all DCI play, all organized play, cover this. If someone is taking forever to wish to find the right card, then that they can get a slow play penalty. And we'll keep monitoring this. And if things need to change because it's not the reality of the situation in the tournament environment is not as we expected, we will be responsive as we are with any problem that crops up.
Yeah, like I said, I got the impression that this first document is very much, instead of starting incredibly rigid and opening up, it's starting a little more open with room to get more rigid here and there, as may prove necessary. Although it also made me pretty excited because with a sideboard of 10, I felt like that's a lot less stuff to worry about wishboarding in. So if it works out, then that is great for me, because I don't want to have to worry about the 10 also being my only options for Ancient Wisdom comboing. Right. That's about all that I've really got for sideboard right now. Aaron, anything else on your end?
No.
All right, then the whole organized play thing, this is leading through a tournament series. So if I remember correctly, the first major tournament is going to be at Origins, which is this month.
Yeah, not this weekend, but next weekend.
Correct.
Hi, editor note. Obviously, that was as of the time of that recording. And that is going to be the first major sanctioned tournament that's going to be relevant to the Energon Open, which is kind of the finale.
That's Energon Invitational. That's the big finale. The Opens are the ones that happen.
Go ahead.
And Open, we call them Opens because it's anybody who has registered the event can show up. There's no prerequisite other than attending Origins, which requires a badge, but you don't need to do anything other than that, other than register and show up.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna give a quick plug to my coworkers. You will be able to hang out and meet John Shork and Ken Nagel at Origins, at the Origins Open. They will both be present.
All right. And then, if you want to win over John Shork, if I recall correctly, bring him some of that Safeway sushi.
Yeah. That's my stop before I get there. It's just Safeway.
Just a huge bag. And you're like, hey, what's up?
Yeah. It's only been in my car for 4 hours. That's cool, right?
Yeah. I think there's a logistical issue with your attempted bribe. Might look okay on the surface, but once you start digging into it, literally.
Now, that's his problem at that point.
Well,
it's what he gets for not being here this time.
Harsh. Also true, but harsh. Anyway, don't bring old sushi to people as a baseline.
Please don't. Please don't.
Also, who knows? I don't know Origins rules. They might have rules about carrying food in, which means you need to sneak that sushi in, and that's going to smell your bag up. So be smart about it. But that's very cool that you get to talk to John and Ken. And the prizes at Origins also involve some, I guess, 2-week early siege packs, if I remember correctly.
That is correct. So everybody who enters one of the preliminary events will get a siege pack, and then the top 8 will get a booster box. In the final 32-player final, the top 8 of that will get a sealed booster box of Siege 1, which is about 2 weeks early. Yep.
Yeah, and
quick note. You can't play any Siege cards in any events until it's officially released. So that means those packs that you get for entering, you can't crack them open and say play Siege Shockwave in a deck. No, don't do it. You will get a penalty.
Yeah, and they very clearly say Wave 3 at the bottom. There's no way to sneak that through.
Nope.
Because some there's a lot of folks. I believe you mentioned this in one of your other recent interviews. There's a lot of folks in Transformers TCG who are also new to TCGs in general. If you are attending one of these events, I would also say go get yourself a fresh pack of dark-backed matte sleeves just for safety's sake. Because in tournament settings, and it's in the rules, but this is standard across a lot of TCGs. You can't be able to see the cards through the sleeve backs. I mean, you can get away with it, but it leaves you open to judge call stuff that judges don't even like dealing with. So it's a very safe thing to just go for some dark, very opaque sleeves.
Yep, and our friends at Ultra Pro make Transformers branded sleeves that are opaque black back sleeves with the Autobot or Decepticon faction symbol on it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I think the general rule of thumb that you're getting at there is when your cards are face down, they should be indistinguishable from one another.
Yeah.
Right.
And I have some confidence, monkey paw, I guess, confidence that ours is not a game that is going to have someone, at least on year one, trying to do some, not manipulation, I guess, but maneuvering through the rules to try to pull off disqualifications or the like. But it's a good practice to pick up so that if that scenario ever comes up, you're protected.
You know what? And the staff at Pastimes Games who will be administrating the event at Origins and at Gen Con and at the PAX Invitational, they are an experienced staff of judges who have been judging for Wizards events for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
So those guys and gals know what they're doing.
Yeah. Always at the end of the day, especially if you're a new player, like trust in the judge. If you don't know what's going on, call the judge over. It's going to be exciting to see what the results are from Origins before we head into Gen Con, which I believe is the second major event.
That's right. So that's Gen Con is August 1st through 4th. I just saw today that Gen Con 4-day passes are they're burning through those passes. So if you haven't gotten a pass to Gen Con and you want to attend, make sure you get a badge to Gen Con.
I was inches away from figuring out if I could make it there, but it just isn't in the cards for me travel-wise.
I will be at Gen Con along with Scott Van Essen.
All right. So don't bring sushi to Gen Con. Bring grapple paraphernalia to Gen Con.
Yeah. if only I'd held off on shipping that. So
see, here I was thinking tacos, but you jumped me to grapple.
I'm keeping it on topic.
Tacos. That's the way to buy you off. Okay, I'm trying to think if I know a good taco place in Indy. I'll find one.
Oh boy! I'll also mention there's a section in the rules that I believe quite literally says header cheating.
Yes.
Don't do things that are cheating. Don't do things that are really obviously blatantly cheating. Like
for example, trying to bribe the development staff.
Especially when the developers are not the judges, so it would be really weird to try to bribe them to win.
Yeah. I'm not trying to bribe them. I'm just trying to elicit bribes. No, wait.
Yeah, the vocabulary just trickled out there. That's all right. That happens to me.
This is not the way to get Omega Supreme in the game.
I'm not trying to. This is a...
So wait, no. This will keep Omega Supreme out of the game?
So if Aaron just keeps claiming that's what he wants, it's going to... which I guess can... I mean, Gen Con will have, I believe, a similar prizing structure to Origins, if I recall correctly.
Yes. Yes, so... Except instead of a box of War for Cybertron Siege 1 for the top 8 in the final event there is a not yet announced Transformers TCG product, which I'm very excited for when we announce, which hopefully will be in the next couple of weeks. But yes, everybody who also pays to enter preliminary event will get a pack of Siege 1, and also everybody who gets in the top 16, just like in Origins, will get an invitation to the Energon Invitational and a 3-day PAX badge.
Right. And then this is all culminating with the Energon Invitational. But aside from those two events, the other ways to qualify are there's something. Is it PAX Tabletop where there's something happening?
So there'll be some last chance qualifiers at PAX Tabletop, which basically are if you're at PAX Tabletop, there'll be a small number of events, and if you win that event, you will get an invitation to the actual invitation, the Energon Invitational.
And then
that's pretty standard. Wizards has been doing last chance qualifiers for a long time. They're a lot of fun. And then the other way, which I think you were going to mention, is in-store play.
Yes, through WPN stores, there should be... is it going to be like one major event, or is it going to be attached to just like general registered events?
So it is one event that we have created in WER, which is the Wizards Event Reporter, and that's the software that you use to create and run events for Wizards games.
Mm-hmm.
That one event is an Energon Invitation qualifier, and we created it for every store who was qualified. And those qualified stores are the ones who participating stores are the ones who ordered a in-store play kit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so that's the store owner can go in and they'll see the event waiting for them, and then they can reschedule that event to whichever date that they want to run that event, and then they can set that as a constructed event, or they can set it as a limited event for Sealed Deck.
Very cool, because all of that does culminate with the Energon Invitational, which has its own much more unique prize structure.
Yes.
There are monetary prizes. Some of the top prizes also include Siege toy releases, and the first place winner gets to work with you guys to create a character card.
That is correct, and that is something that I am super excited for. So we did this with Kaijudo pretty regularly, and it was a huge hit.
Mm-hmm.
And so we wanted to run this again. This is your chance, should you win, to get Omega Supreme in the game. Caveat: if Hasbro Transformers team approves it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm like with Transformers and people who are fans of the franchise. The longer you're with it, the more you realize. It's not just that, you might want to get your favorite character in there, but you might have to, for instance, you might not be able to use a certain likeness of that character or a certain version of them. You might not be able to use specifically their name as you remember it. But there is still quite a wide open palette to work with in Transformers, and also in the toy line, a lot of real creative ways to get around characters who otherwise probably couldn't have been in the toy line anymore. So I think that anyone's idea is probably going to work out as long as it isn't Circuit Breaker. That's fully off the table.
I think that was editorializing there.
Well, I'm just saying, Circuit Breaker's in a very unique position for a number of reasons, but among them being you guys probably don't want to have a human character appear in this thing.
Oh, I'm misremembering who you're talking about.
Circuit Breaker
Breaker was the Marvel Comics character that she got like cyborgified.
She's the naked lady covered in blue circuit lines who could shoot electricity, and whose ownership got so weird that she actually
not her.
She can't exist anywhere right now.
Yeah, let's not do her.
Yeah. That said, though, if someone can come up with a real creative way to get that Dr. Arkeville in a big cyborg chair in the game, like, of course, I'm always down for that. But I'm excited to see how this all turns out. I mean, I would like for Omega Supreme to make his way into the game sooner than later. But, I understand other people might have other lesser characters that they're into who they want to put in there. Who knows? Maybe the person who wins is going to be like, hey, can you guys do Optimus Prime? And you'll be like, well, we did him. He's like, oh.
But you know what? We'll do them again, and we'll do the version of Optimus Prime to the best of our ability. And the Hasbro team will work with us. This isn't a no generator situation, right?
Yeah.
Like we're all going to collaborate as much as possible to make the intent of the winner, subject to that final check.
Yeah.
Happen. I'm really excited. And so just a little bit more about that. That means the person will get to pick all this is subject to the terms and conditions, which you can find out on an announcement page. And I have to say that, but we'll work with the person on which existing character the card is and what version of that character. And if it's a specific version of the character, how that is played out in the game mechanics that represent what that character and that version of the character can do. We're also open to a little bit of work on the specific game design for that, and we'll be in constant contact with the person.
Yeah.
This is it's a lot of fun, guys.
It sounds like it's not like name a character and you better get it right, but like obviously even if someone says Optimus Prime, it could be suggested, for instance, like, all right, well, here's some really interesting Optimus Primes. I would love to see there's some real niche stuff that could be fun to bounce off of someone who maybe just doesn't have like a real specific idea of what they want. Like there was a black and gold Optimus Prime released a few years ago in Titan's Return, whose Titan Master was designed to be a weird little skateboarding robot called Grindor. Shredicus Maximus, who came with his own little skateboard that he could ride around on. There's stuff,
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, and I'm sure that the community will help people who whose Transformers knowledge is not as deep as others, because it's a great community, and I think that this person will have a lot of opportunity to get what they want from it.
And someone who definitely should at least get a small education in the great character that is Omega Supreme.
Or more.
We'll see what I can do about that.
See, you could come to Origins, you could come to Gen Con, you could stay on my couch for Gen Con, but no.
Well, yeah, I'll just walk there. Because I can skip the travel costs and everything, and then I'll be ready.
Yeah.
I'll be brain fit and ready to do battle.
Just be thinking about what decks you're going to be playing. Just beautiful mind games the whole walk.
That's right.
Aaron, am I going to see you at Gen Con?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Fantastic.
Yep,
it's where we met. Come on, man.
Still no proof that Aaron and I are different people, but
I don't actually go to every Gen Con, so just want to check to make sure you're coming.
Yeah, no, I'll be there mostly running Robo Rally, but now I have a very legitimate excuse to be like, look, I want this afternoon off to get in at least one of these invitational rounds.
Yeah.
Are you part of the crew that makes the custom Robo Rally boards?
Yeah.
Really?
I'm one of the guys that kicks those robots all weekend.
So you're part of the group that did the Robo Rally board a few years ago that got exponentially larger?
That's the giant Lego one?
Yeah.
That's in the Serpentine lobby every year? Yes.
Wow. All right.
I got to watch the guy that built it and programmed all of it have an argument with Richard Garfield over how conveyor belts work. And Richard Garfield's the guy that designed the game in the first place. So that was a fun thing to be sitting there manning the control board behind everything, just going, he has the notebook at home that has his handwriting of how the rules really are.
Yeah. Have you been doing this for a long time?
Yeah.
I have a feeling that we've met at that event.
Maybe.
You should meet up at that event again this year.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I might do that.
Just saying, he's not going to be there. I think it would be really cool if you guys.
I love Robo Rally. FYI, I'm a huge Robo Rally fan. I have a sealed first edition Robo Rally sitting on my shelf.
Nice.
I've always almost picked up that game, but every time I've been in a position to play it, someone else has it. So it's become one of those games that I haven't picked up because I feel like I'm never going to need to have it. That's a weird tabletop conversation you can have, though, on a greater spectrum.
Yep. Spectrum.
Yeah. Everyone who's ever had their own games library, as far as I know, can attest to that. But the Energon invitational stuff, that's kind of that's capping off year one of Transformers TCG as well, for in a rough scale.
Right, and the timing of the invitational is such that Siege Wave 2 will have come out not too long before that.
Ooh!
So it'll be a new metagame.
Oh boy. Who's going to take the risks then? Because if you got your invitation, that was on the back of a deck that could be completely different by the time you get there.
Yeah. Yes. There'll be the metagame will definitely have a lot of cool and exciting stuff. And when we're talking about the invitation, we're talking about people who have demonstrated already high level of skill at the Transformers trading card game. So it's an exciting moment for them to go into a new environment and show off their chops.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron, you got to get in there so you can get me my Spreem, because I'm sure that's what you would do.
Yeah. What are you looking for? Anything but Spreem. I don't care.
Any of the other Action Master elites. We're down with this.
That would be the real kick in the teeth.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, thanks. I wasn't even thinking that.
I've actually been through this once. BotCon some years ago did an Action Master Elite, but it was Double Punch. I remember at the time I had a very 99% faux outrage response to it. But yeah.
But that 1% was the kernel of a rage that has not yet subsided.
You've been hearing it every time you show up here.
That one that nobody remembers.
So Aaron's going to have a chance. I'm going to have a chance through a store competition, hopefully. And all of you listening are going to have a chance. So let's all get together, put our heads together, play some good games, and make sure Omega Supreme is the card that comes out of that.
And if you're lucky enough to have multiple stores in your area that are participating and running invitation, Energon Invitation qualifiers. I mean, you can go to more than one, right?
As long as we can get them to not run them all on the same day, that'll be the main thing. Hopefully they're all listening to this so they know not to do that. Aaron, you got any other comments on the major tourney events?
No, I'm excited to get in on it.
Yeah, do you got I mean, I can't ask Drew because that's kind of asking inside the house, but Aaron, you got any predictions on what might be like some of the harder decks to deal with?
No idea.
All right.
I mean, TFCon LA, I never would have thought that Metroplex would be as dominating as that was, and then it won. A couple different people had Metroplex decks that just mopped everything up.
We warned everyone.
We
told you guys.
Yeah. And now every time new stuff is coming out, I'm also noticing like all the very subtle ways that like we added a star to this, or sideboarding is 20 stars or under, is all these very small subtle like Metroplex is very powerful, everybody. Parts of the way the game's set up.
So that's like one of the things I was considering of just build the anti-bold deck. Why? Because.
Yeah.
Just like if all I can do after paying my $30 or whatever to get in and play is beat one Metroplex deck, that'll be a win for Aaron.
Well, and also like ruin the day of anyone running fire cons.
Well, those aren't legal yet.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're a Gen Con, they're going to be.
Yeah,
Gen Con, yeah, they'll totally be legal.
And I suspect you're going to see a couple fire cons teams because they seem like they're built to be like, here's common aggro. You can put together pretty quickly.
And also, if you're doing that, the W5 Gyro Blaster is your friend.
Yeah, I saw that card and was like, that's what I need for the deck, and I can't put it in it yet.
Yeah. Well,
but you've got Asset Storm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the time Gen Con's here, you can have the Gyro Blaster. You can have it with Satsuki or without. No one's made that joke yet, I bet. That's because there's a Greek rap called a Euro, but it's spelled gyro. Anyway.
Yeah. So Wednesdays at WotC are Gyro Day at the cafe.
Oh, you must have enjoyed this card then.
And John Shork, who I don't think you've gotten this, but is a noted master of puns, may have made that comment earlier.
He stole it from me. I got to mail it to myself.
No, you're just on the same wavelength, man.
Oh man, I also had
that's a mean thing to say about Chris.
I had some cheap sushi the other day too, and I didn't mind it. And okay, well, speaking as Canada's John Shork, I had a couple other slightly more granular questions from the greater rules document that were still on the back of my head, but
I will answer to the best of my ability. But I just want to let you know that this Friday's Rules Roundup will be addressing a lot of community questions about...
and I have directed a couple of tourney organizers towards that email address.
Many thanks.
Because I also was like, I got some info from them of like some ideas to have for stuff we could talk about, but I also told them like, if you wanted to get straight to rules people, like that's going to be the way. There was one that was interesting to me even before I read into the more granular sense of it, because it is very different from Magic's rules, and that is the electronic devices chapter. Granted, this game has an app, which I believe is somewhat of the motivation behind the decisions in that section. And I did a bit of testing. Now, that section is that electronic devices are allowed for note-taking and for the app, but just those two things. And if you receive a phone call, you can take it if it is not pertaining to the game. My first thing is I feel like the most important thing is having a notepad open and having the Lifekeeper app open for TCG. I tried doing both with my phone in airplane mode and Wi-Fi turned off, and the relevant apps still work, which I believe mitigates most of the qualms that were raised to me when I was discussing this with one of the TOs.
That was the intent. The app was specifically designed so that it could function without a data connection.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's a utility, right? Like you need to be able to use it.
Because I'm just wondering if it might be pertinent to folks running tournaments to just add that as maybe a stipulation for use of electronic devices, because it really solves every little crease and crinkle that exists when an electronic device is up and running attached to the internet. Like, you get a text message, it pops up at the top of the screen. And then it becomes a query of like, was that someone texting you something that they can see from on the other side of the room, or was that something else? Or receiving calls, which to me seems like it could just become problematic for everyone involved if you are actually like just going, hold up, I got to take this call, which isn't about the game. So I'm wondering if it might be just something to throw out to tourney organizers that like if you just stipulate they got to be in airplane mode, that might solve everything. But
and tourney organizers have a lot of latitude in how they run their events, as long as they're in accordance with the rules. So that is a great suggestion for tournament organizers who have customers and players who are concerned.
Yeah, I think that it seals up a lot of things, because obviously like the goal is like the app is a tool that is official. It's a way to just run things with it. Like if you don't have access to counters or whatever, and if you want to keep your deck lists in it, like I can see why you would want the app available. But right before we recorded, I actually had that probably not all that genius idea of trying out airplane mode, and it totally works.
No, that was a good idea. That's a good thing to let people know. I wouldn't have remembered to say that.
Yeah, because
and just diving into this for a second. The broad rules cover all of these situations. Outside information transmitted to you in any way, whether it's semaphore, smoke signals, Morse code, or a telephone or text call, is cheating. And if you're caught at that, you're caught, and the penalties will be applied. And life totals and publicly available information inside the game state must be displayed and available to both players on request, as listed in the rules. So having an electronic device on the table for you so you can take notes, or so you can use the companion app to track health and damage, doesn't absolve a player of the cardinal rules of don't cheat.
Yeah.
And don't misrepresent the game state.
Yeah, and I feel like I said before, I feel like the nature of the player base for this game is one where I don't feel in year one you're going to have, double digits of people all trying to figure out ways to, like you said, like send each other coded messages through text that pop up for half a second at the top of the app if they aren't in airplane mode. But from a TO perspective, I can see like wanting to just zone in immediately on these potentials. In general, like we're all just looking forward to seeing how this stuff runs. That's the main thing. Is like suddenly this game has changed in both its scope and in a little bit in its I guess what you could call it its underlying seriousness to a degree. And I've seen also reactions in multiple directions of how that's changing the tone of the game for them overall. But it feels like the spirit still in general is one of ages 8 and up. Would that be correct to say? Like, even though the rules say if you're under 12 you have to have parental permission, it seems like even these tourney rules to a degree are taking into account that kind of that base mission statement.
Yeah, the mission statement hasn't changed. This is still a game for Transformers fans of a number of ages and a number of different skill levels. The fact that we have now organized play, I think, allows structure to happen. But as with our other games, there are inside Magic, for example, there are events that people run in the organized play system that are official and sanctioned, that are for new players and learning events, and they're the highest level of play at the MPL. And similar to Transformers, the nature and tenor of the game, OP allows for all of these expressions. And you don't have to participate in OP. If you just want to play in the way people have been playing before, that's fine too.
I would just say, if you are someone who is averse to some of the more high level stipulations and organized play stuff, like, make it clear to your game store that you want a venue to play on a casual level. That to me is the big thing to do right now. In Toronto, for instance, we still have casual nights, and I think it's very valuable that we still do. Because you also...
Yep, and WPN store owners are familiar with this. We've been doing this with Magic for a long time. There are casual play nights for Magic. And a lot of the structure that we have for the Transformers TCG builds off of things that we have been doing and practicing with as a company, and our local game store owners in the WPN system have been enacting for years now. So it's not unfamiliar.
Yeah, it's one of the more frightened reactions I saw was just that, like, is this game going to turn into a top 8 decks or what everyone runs, etc. And I think we're a little fortunate in that the game has had to survive about 3/4 of a year on casual alone. And it seems like on your guys' end, like the attitude is still one of wanting to have this game be able to have its loud, ridiculous moments first and foremost.
Yes, absolutely. It needs to be Transformers.
Yeah, see, like I just have doubts myself that it's going to orient. It's weird to say with Drew sitting right in the room, but to you, the listener, I have doubts that this is going to like move itself towards being like as streamlined a metagame as like a very hard version of standard Magic, or like a lot of the top 8s in modern Magic right now. It seems unlikely to me at the moment. So we'll see where things go. But I have one other little rules thing. This is mostly actually a PSA, and then I have a couple other fun things I wanted to ask you about. But my little PSA first. I'm sure you guys have probably seen the reaction here and there. I myself and many people in Toronto were guilty of it too, because we only saw one thing and didn't see the header at the top. The rules for determining the winner of an unfinished single elimination game involve flipping pips off the top.
Yes.
And whoever has the most orange pips. Now, determining winner by flipping orange pips is the part most of us read first. And I want to add here, in case you, the listener, hadn't caught it, that is for the case of both a single elimination tournament game that also is somehow not running to its completion, even when the appendix of the rules suggests that those games should always run to the end of completion. That is the scenario for the orange pip flip. I am curious, is that in the rules just so there is something in the rules for stores that just run into a time crunch in that scenario, or?
That's correct. So one of the things that we found is that there needs to be an official way for a game to have an ending in situations where that are extreme, right? And like we're talking about an odd extreme case here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we could have picked any number of ways. Orange Pips was a fun way that very, very, and I'm talking about 100% leans towards games that would naturally finish anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes.
It bears repeating, the appendix does imply, like, those games also should be running to completion if possible anyway.
Right. And there's already another, like, breaker in front of it.
Yes, that's the thing. It's not the first tiebreaker. It's, in fact, lower down in the list.
Mm-hmm.
It's for situations that are basically resolvable.
Yeah. I wanted to throw that PSA in here because I'm very much one of the people who had only caught part of that information and was very much blinking a few times at first. In an actual best of 3, it's much more akin to Magic's rules, where you determine a turn 0. With Transformers, you just have one more turn after that, and then it is whatever the result of that is. Very cool. Aaron, do you have any other questions about the formal play rules?
No, I read through them all, and I don't know if there's any of them that aren't reasonable.
Well,
Like there's,
Thanks, guys.
it's as we've said before, you guys are already coming from a place of having had rule sets before.
This was really a team effort, but I want to give a specific call out to Matt Tabak as rules manager and Chris Kulak from the organized play group, who put a lot of work into this.
Yeah. I mean, I like that there's even, your timings for booster drafts as guidelines for, to help stores out that maybe are newer and maybe haven't done this sort of thing with Magic before. So it definitely seems like it's a very well-rounded document, and somebody who half of his job is looking at technical documents. Thumbs up.
Well, I should throw out, there was a big praise on a tournament organizer level as well. And by the way, the main TO I was talking to was Saul over at Three Kingdoms Games by Eglinton Station in Toronto. Saul is one of the biggest pushers on a store level for Transformers in Toronto. I believe it is very much thanks to him in part that the game managed to build some roots before we, got all caught up. And he likes to go through these rules in minutiae. So he actually put up a video on Three Kingdoms YouTube channel, which is him going through the formal play rules to translate them into more layman terms for the player perspective. And one thing he mentioned to me that, again, this is the kind of thing I just wouldn't have caught, is the minimum number of registered players for a registered event for Transformers is 4, as opposed to Magic, which I believe needs 8. And that I thought was fantastic. Actually, to pass on Saul's sentiment, he actually wishes that was the case with Magic as well, because from my limited experience, it's so much easier to get 4 people together to agree to do a thing than it is 8. And it's going to encourage, I think, a lot more players, at least in our area, to get together. Also because we're going to be able to finally run registered booster drafts, which we've all kind of been wanting to do for a while. I'm really happy that it's a lowered minimum for Magic. It feels way more realistic for this game as well, being a younger game.
And we have a lot of stores that are signing up with the first time that they signed up to do anything Transformers was with the in-store play kit for Wave 3. We've seen a lot of growth there. Mm-hmm. And we know that as communities grow, it's unreasonable to expect 8 players on any given night for a new game. So we wanted to give, again, that flexibility. It harkens back to the same theme that we have had in a lot of our other decisions, is putting a lot of flexibility in how stores can do their business when it comes to Transformers.
Yeah, that was really nice to see. It's 4 is just, it's hard to explain from a player perspective until you've been through it, but 4 is so much more like doable than 8 in a way you might not even expect.
It's something like that. It's exponentially harder to get 8 people than 4, because it's not just double, it's also, and everybody wants to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yep. A game that fires is better than a game. And I have been in so many draft nights that had 7 people hanging on, and one person leaves and another person shows up.
Yep.
And it's like, oh.
I mean, we just had a big sealed event over here for the launch of Wave 2 in Canada, and we had 7 people because one person couldn't get the night off work. And that's a perfect example as well. 7 is like it's odd. 7 is a very achievable number, particularly when you need 8. It's some kind of cosmic law. Also, patting myself on the back, I won that tournament, so go me.
Congratulations, man.
It's a 6-pack sealed. I opened Ruckus and Autobot Nova Star, and it worked out. It was certainly not easy. I had to work a lot for those last 2 games in the last 2 rounds in the 3-round system.
I mean, you are the gamble that you're taking is one that we wanted people to have actively choose to do or not do, which is raw stats versus flexibility.
And you know what? Especially in Limited, those raw stats were raw stats. Like I was fortunate that I also had mounted missiles available to me, and I had a lot of just raw stat upgrades available. I was actually able to switch between Leap of Faith or Energized Field for my 2nd star, depending on the situation. But yeah, it was to the point where I had to start to explain to a couple people, like, no, these characters actually aren't broken in Sealed. I lucked out a little bit that y'all didn't manage to build like a ridiculous synergy out of what y'all have, but I lucked out that I have some raw stat cards. Like I ran even orange and blue pips as well when Energized Field wasn't in. This is a lot of tactics, a lot of thinking. Anyway, that's me patting myself on the back.
I'm gonna jump on that for a second, because 6-pack sealed is a lot of fun. We really enjoy it, and I know that I've been praising Turbo in some past times we've discussed, but I gotta say 6-packs. We have a lot of stuff that's interesting build choices built into Wave 2, and you'll see it in Wave 3. Sealed is super interesting. With 2 bots a pack in Wave 3, Sealed is super interesting for your character build.
So we're actually a little hesitant to go. We were thinking for Wave 3, some of the stores might dial back to 4-pack Sealed only because there's 2 characters per pack. And with 6-pack, it sometimes feels, it felt like with Wave 1 at times, there was a bit of an overly large depth of choice. Do you think would you say 6-pack still works well for Siege 1?
It's less. The issue is less character cards. Yes, there's a lot of choices in the card build, but the important thing here is 6-packs gives you the battle cards you need to build a interesting and what we feel is healthy sealed deck pool.
All right. I got to remember to pass that along, because we are also in Toronto. We're all kind of talking about what to do at the end of the month, so that's good to know. Where was I going from that? Right, I was patting myself on the back. Let's do that again. I wanted to say I'm really enjoying seeing, because Siege 1 has so much original art for the battle cards this time around. I'm really enjoying watching. You know, I have a lot of priorities about the artists and the credit they receive, obviously, from our discussions before. It's a lot of fun watching the artists getting to start doing, you know, after the full-on spoiler happens, they're doing kind of their own second spoiler of, hey, I did the colors on this card, or Josh Perez just today, sharing that he did the inking and, or lines and colors for Point Defense System and Frag Toss.
Yep.
And Josh Perez is one of the most talented artists who does not often get to just do full-on lines and colors outside of his prints. That it is fantastic to see him getting a venue to do that with this game, especially because the artwork for Frag Toss and Point Defense System showcase a whole lot of the stuff I think Josh is best at. Kinetic action, very large animated looking light shows and explosions with reflective coloring across reflective surfaces. So I just wanted to throw out there, I'm really enjoying seeing what feels like the artists taking a lot more ownership of the battle card art that's appearing. I'll put the call out again. Hopefully people are collecting all of this information in a spreadsheet, because I'm too lazy to. But it seems like it's really turning out well. And Siege 2, is that going to be original battle card art as well?
Yes, it is all original battle card art. Nice. And even more significantly, original character card art as well.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah, I hope that the artists all keep, you know, when they get the opportunity, like attaching their names to what they work on, just so it's even more clear, like what to specifically bring them when they're at a convention and you might want to get them to sign something.
Yep. And we hear you, and we're working to make sure that artists have the ability to talk about the work that they did and the specific roles that they played on character cards. We want this to happen. We love our art team.
Yeah.
We're looking. There's a lot of great art. It just final signed, sealed, and delivered Wave 4 to the printers, and there's a lot of great stuff. Ken Christensen has done some amazing pieces for us for characters for Wave 4. Mm-hmm. The team at Keywords and all of the artists that they work with did a great job. Just a very minor spoiler for Wave 4. But in Wave 4, the Autobots find a way to return that frag to its sender.
I like the idea that some of the small narratives you've talked about in the battle cards might carry across the two sets. That sounds That sounds great.
They do it in a really interesting way. So props to Matt Smith, who did concepting. So the way art works at Wizards is for Transformers is game design and creative will sit down and have discussions, and this will happen over the course of the game design of a set. And then once the game design is almost complete and finalized, creative will write card concepts for each of these cards, which involves a proposed title and a proposed art description. Mm-hmm. And then that will get tightened up along with game design. So there might be some ways that game design can say, oh, that's a great concept. If I made these little tweaks, we can bring the card concept and the game design a little bit closer together. And then when that's finalized, an art director, who for Wave 3 was me, and for Wave 4 it was Shanna Duncan, the art director works with individual artists and Keyword Studios, formerly Volta, and to actually create the art. Mm-hmm. And at Keywords, Sarah is the art director. They are on the Transformers projects, and so she oversees the art direction based on our art descriptions. And then for the sketches, for the pencils for the character cards, that's a WotC art director.
And I got to say, I'm extremely hyped to have discovered that Sarah got to do some battle card art as well. Squish them like bugs. I was looking at that art, just thinking this feels solid. Who did this? And she dropped that was one of hers, and I'm really into this. I mean, I know that we can't get this for every single wave necessarily, but this is making the Siege waves exponentially more exciting to me on an art level.
Yep. And as I mentioned before, but it's important we'll be going back to IDW art, probably alternating back and forth. Mm-hmm. Okay. Or doing a mix of IDW comic art and original comic art, because both of these have an important place for the Transformers TCG.
And just a small. This might be a little bit too far in the door. Can you say whether or not the sibling card to Frag Toss still starts with the word frag?
1 second.
All right.
No.
Oh, okay. Man. All right. So for
No, but I can tell you it's part of a 3 or 4 card visual story that's told in battle cards.
All right.
It's not across 3 or 4 whole waves, is it?
No, the entire story is in wave 4
The
battle
greatest
cards.
Wait
story
till
ever told.
2022 to get the last image.
This is, in fact, the true TCG fiction. So that's also, hey, there's info for whoever it is that makes those, I can't fathom them, those big alphabetized fill in the slots and predict what the cards are spreadsheets. It doesn't start with frag. I don't know if that's data for you or not, but there you go. Yeah, Squish 'em like bugs is just been on my mind, because also that seems like a very cool effect. I listened into the spoiler you guys did with Sabertron for that one, and that also seems like a real fun Metroplex effect.
Yes, it was. So we look back at existing archetypes when we do game design, and we continue to add in a few things to older archetypes to help keep them fresh and current and evolving with the metagame and provide new tools. And that one was one of the things that we had designed with a bunch of characters, but specifically also with Metroplex in mind.
Would just going off that line of thought, something I'm curious about. Obviously, Combiners would be one of those archetypes, but would you say something like Devastator would be considered a separate archetype as well, since he has that tower mechanic?
He is, but he's also a separate archetype because he has 6 small characters that start and play, which is unusual. So he's sort of a 2 separate types of things that you can be doing for Devastator. It is not to be underestimated the advantage of having 6 small star characters in play at the beginning of the game.
Now, it's little design things like that. I love. I've said this before. I continue to love learning about that stuff, and it gives me a lot of confidence for Metroplex as well. I appreciate that you guys are still supporting Metroplex, while also clearly needing to do a lot of work to make sure he does not become ridiculously overpowered.
Yep. Do you have any other favorite pieces of art from Wave 4, guys?
Oh, I mean, Squish 'em like bugs is a big one for me. I like it was sort of the obvious choice, but not in the bad way. I appreciate the I forgot the card name now. It was in that block of spoilers as well, but Starscream with Megatron's cannon.
Yeah, that was a really fun one.
Yeah, like that's not like that's probably one of the most immediate choices one could make, but that art really carries it through.
I think that's Scavenge the Battlefield.
Yeah.
Yes.
I appreciate that one a lot.
Yep. There's another fun gag in similar lines in Wave 4.
Okay.
Aaron, what do you think?
Of a card I like? I don't know. I got
Just specifically the art.
I got excited for the what's the one with Ratchet on it, for the thoughts of, hey, that's the obvious remold for that Ironhide mold, just from the toy side of thing. Take Cover.
Yep.
Had to hunt through. So
that was the obvious repaint we could do.
Yeah.
You know, we as with the character cards, we do get to play around a little bit here.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and you guys just had Trigger Happy drop today or yesterday, if I recall correctly.
Sure did, and we had sort of telegraphed him on Smoke Cloak for a while, and some people were trying to figure out who that was. Some people got it right.
The one thing I kind of enjoyed were the number of people who looked at Smoke Cloak and went like, "Oh, so he's not a jet," and I was kind of going like, "I think you just don't know what Trigger Happy looks like."
Yeah.
Right, because there's multiple forms of Cybertronian jet that have been depicted in Transformers over time, and Trigger Happy is kind of an unusual style of jet, but he's from that era of toys.
Yeah, it's that kind of that bullet train Shinkansen style cockpit shape.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you guys are just about done with spoiler season for Siege, right? Like we're kind of hitting the very end. I saw John today dropped one because someone said, I think there's 15 battle cards left, and he said -1.
And that was Frag Toss, I believe.
Yeah.
And we have one. I believe we have one character card left as of the day that we're recording this.
Editor note: it was Taraxodon. Good old Taraxodon. Well, I think we're hitting about the end of your time here, Drew. So thank you for coming by once again.
As always, it was a pleasure. I love talking to you guys, and I look forward to seeing you when I can.
Yeah, you'll definitely see Aaron. There's still no proof that I actually exist, but one of these days.
Chris, I hope to see you at the Invitational. Aaron, I'm looking forward to seeing you at Gen Con.
Yeah, we'll do, sir.
Yeah.
All right.
And thank you again for coming by. Thank you, dear listeners, for listening in or checking us out on YouTube if you're watching it where I posted it there. Let me know what other kind of TCG stuff you want to see. We're we got a little bit of time here and there to talk about stuff. Deck techs are an obvious one, but let me know if there's anything else you want to know about, or if you yourself have any advice on sideboarding from your own experiences in TCGs. A lot of people playing this game could use a little bit of coaching in that regard. There was a note on Facebook for the TCG page that had some info on sideboarding. I've seen at least one or two basic articles come up. Pitch in some advice yourself. Help out people like me. And until we talk to you next time, keep shuffling them cards.
What the f***'s going on down there?
I still got to work on that. That's not a t-shirt. That's not a t-shirt logo.
No, that's not.
We'll get there.